Yeah.
What's up, gamers? Welcome back to the V-Generates podcast. I'm here with my lovely co-host, the Junie Boy, just the Junie Boy. Grim has forsaken us yet again. Dirty slut.
He does this way too often. He needs to stop being, out fighting Somalian pirates. Like, they have a coast guard for a reason.
You're not wrong. Absolutely correct. Today, our review of Ghostwatch, a film from 1992, I believe it was.
Correct.
A lot of controversy on this one. A lot of controversy, a lot of drama, a lot of interesting factoids. Um, we can hash that out. Do you think we should hash it out now or after?
I think we'll talk about the controversy at the end. Just kind of, I think for now we just talk about like some of the details of the movie. Who were what was the premise of the movie? I guess.
Okay, so we got some parapsychologists basically investigating a home in England. They are consistently with this family. We are going with them on Halloween night. We are spending this time with them, going back and forth between them, some callers, and basically skeptics are going through trying to disprove what's going on in this house, while we're trying to figure out what is going on in this house, whether the skeptics are right or whether the parapsychologists are right. Yeah, that's kind of really got to as the plot point, I suppose. Not
Basically, yeah.
not really
But as
spoiled.
as the movie or the broadcast claims, it is a live broadcast in the most haunted location in England.
Yeah. Two girls seem to be getting targeted by a ghost, a rather aggressive one. We got Susie and Kimmy, both in this house with their mom, Pam. Like I think her name was Mrs. Early Haley.
Early, I think was the
Yeah,
name.
I thought
Yeah.
it was Early, but I was like, Mrs. Early is a weird fucking name. I might be mishearing it, but I was not apparently. So we got the three girls in the house. We are sitting here, back and forth between three girls with Sarah, the host at the actual house herself, and I believe cameramen and outside people. There are people working the van, but we're not there yet.
Yeah.
Um, but we have at the BBC broad. Psst, fucking cat. Um, psst,
It's always lovely to hear.
fucking annoying me. She's sitting there grabbing something. Um, so the people at the actual BBC are hosting it, and there is Doctor. What's her name? I can't remember her name.
To be fair,
Whoever,
they said her name once and then just kind of like stopped right there.
of course they
So
did.
I understand why.
We have an actual doctor of, I assume parapsychology, whatever the fuck.
Yeah. Her
And then we
name
have,
is Dr. Lynn Pascoe.
there we go, that's her name. Then we
Got you
have a
covered.
very British host, very British host. Um, that's where we're at. So we get to the house. There's a giant. There's not like a giant crowd surrounding the house, but it seems like the neighborhood is surrounding the house, which is kind of interesting to me. Did you notice that at all?
What's that?
There's like a crowd. Like at the beginning of the movie, there's a crowd surrounding the house, but I guess the
Yeah.
more as you go on, you actually do see a little bit more of the crowd. But at the beginning, I was kind of curious.
There,
Well,
there was a crowd kind of already surrounding the house, but you could probably equate that to they have literally a BBC broadcasting crew like getting ready to go inside. So they see like the vans and stuff parked out there.
yeah, that does.
And it's like, oh, there must be something cool in this house.
There's some cool shit going,
Yeah,
or crazy shit.
either one.
It's the crazy shit. Um, so we meet Alan, the expert outside, basically giving us the phasmophobia tutorial.
Yeah.
Uh, that's literally all Alan is doing. Alan's going through and he's telling us about all the machines and how they work, whatever the fuck. We barely see Alan for the most part. He's just kind of there to give us some exposure, some fucking exposition, and what's going on and how these things work. Um,
It's pretty much the rough gist of it. Yeah.
yeah, we're getting a lot of information, a lot of exposition. But I think at this point, you and I both stopped, and we were talking about how slow this movie was.
Yeah.
Um,
Because this was in like the first 10 minutes of the movie. Like they gave us like a brief introduction to the family, and then we have this cameraman, audio guy explaining, how different like equipment that they have works. And it was just like it's not even fair to call it like a, phasmophobia tutorial because literally all they went in with was a camera and like a boom mic. So it's like
Basically.
it was very not like it actually makes me want to look up when the craze of like yeah, all the different fancy like EMF detection stuff came into play.
Yeah, it is an interesting thing. I didn't think of that. I haven't. I don't know, it's one of those things you always think was there. Don't really ever think about it existing or not existing prior. Um, I'm kind of curious now as well. When did
Yeah.
ghost hunting get the ups, get the big old technology advance? You meet Chris Miller, the camera guy. He doesn't fucking matter. Sarah says nothing can lurk in the shadows, and I think it's a wild thing to say when foreshadowing exists. And maybe let's just instead say that the last donut can lurk in the box, and just set ourselves up for success instead. You know,
Nah,
Oh,
you're
holy.
good.
Oh,
is
hey,
this
Grim.
the fucking bitch?
A
We're doing the fucking
surprise.
podcast, and here he is.
Yeah, surprise host appearance.
Yeah.
How is
Hey, what's
fighting
up?
Somalian pirates going?
They're raiding each day. They keep trying to get my fat ass. They keep
Well,
waking
fuck them
them up.
all.
You sound like you're
Power,
But
fighting them right now.
power bottom all of them.
the sound of my ass cheeks alert them. The
That's
It
sound
great.
should. It
travels on
should.
the way.
At this point in the movie, we going in. We're going into the house, but it's not for very long. Just basically say hi. Hi girls. Hi dog. Hi Sarah. How's it going? And then back to the doctor and the host. Um, we're hopeful for activity, and a caller comes in who is depressingly British. I wrote. She was.
Depressingly British. Explain.
Uh, I don't know, but she made me want to fucking Kermit in Minecraft. So I don't know. I just remember being depressed whenever she came on, and it made me sad. Um, this is whenever the caller is talking about the figure in the footage. We quickly like debunk this, blah blah blah, that there wasn't anything there, which I think is kind of nice because a lot of movies they would be like this would be the point where they're trying to push their narrative, like oh yes that's the thing you saw, ooh spooky. No, they're actually it makes a lot. It makes it different from a lot of movies where they're kind of uh saying hey no, fuck that shit,
Yeah.
that's wrong. It's nice. I like that.
The parapsychology professional, like the doctor, is basically being like, okay, here's how we can realistically debunk this stuff, which is there it's meant to look professional and it's respectable in that regard.
Yeah, it does seem very realistic when we're going through. Like it, there is so much downtime that it feels like it is a news report almost
Yeah.
in that way, where you're actually dealing with real lives, which I think is part of what made these controversies in this so real.
Yeah.
You
Which we
know,
will talk about, I
we will.
promise.
We're going down that rabbit hole. It's Junian rabbit holes. There's no better fucking combination.
This is a rabbit hole that I after we finished the movie, I sat there reading for a good 15 minutes. There is a lot of stuff that happened.
Fair. That fucking dirty slut, by the way, he's probably doing nothing, and I guess he's at work. He's technically at work.
He's on a boat, so like,
Yeah,
he's making sure he sleeps with a machete under his pillow just because, if they do get on board, he has to fight for his life.
you're not wrong. He's a little pirate, little spicy pirate boy.
Yeah.
Um, so where are we at here? Sarah can't bob. I said Sarah can't bob for shit, but we got
Oh
some
yeah.
thumping. Fantastic. Sarah's trying to bob with the girls on Halloween night for some apples. She can't fucking do it because she's a pussy, and then we get a thump. Uh, it's actually instead of being something interesting to the plot, it is asshole Greg who fuck you, Greg. I don't know why I wrote fuck you. I do know why I wrote fuck you, Greg, because I fucking hate Greg. Greg is very scouse. I've noticed. I mean, not very scouse, but he is ever so slightly scouse, and he's a pain in the ass. I don't know why, but every time he's on screen, I want to punch an orphan. Um,
Damn.
yeah, fuck
Some
you, Greg.
strong emotions about this guy.
Look in the camera right now. If you're on YouTube, look in the camera right now. Fuck you, Greg. I'm sorry if your name's Greg, but fuck you anyway. Greg gave you a bad name. So, 1991, December 28th, the first occurrence. The oldest, the oldest daughter is literally Hermione. I can't focus. I say. Um, if you didn't notice, Suzanne sounds like fucking Hermione like 30 times in this movie.
You'd be asking the wrong person. I still have not finished the third
I,
movie.
it's a little fucking tidbit for you gamers who've watched it, I guess. But if you have watched this and you are now hearing Hermione in your head, I can't blame you. Also, I never said no spoilers. But we're probably gonna get into some spoilers. And if you haven't watched this movie, I'd at least suggest that you can find it for free with no cost and very easily to you on archive.org.
It is also 30 years old at this point, so any spoilers I don't feel bad about.
Yeah, fuck you if you haven't read it, but I mean, not really. I, I'm not mad. I'm not sad about it. I'm not sad about spoiling it. Get into
No,
it. There's nothing.
like realistically, right? It's came out in 1992, got banned for 10 years, and it's technically, if you want to be pedantic about it, it's been around for 22 years, not 32 years. So you very well could have still seen it either way.
You're not wrong. But also, I did give you the. There wasn't very many spoilers there, so you're kind of cool. You're pretty cool there. But yeah, we'll watch it and then come back if you haven't. Would highly recommend. Unless you feel like just hearing us talk about something completely random that you have no idea about, which could be more fun, honestly.
They're here for the rabbit hole stuff. It's all right.
It's true. Mom experienced a occurrence a few days later, and she suggested it was pipes. Which what you do is whenever you have a like a broken car or a house making noises or any sort of electronic or mechanical vehicle or whatever the fuck you have, and you're a poor person, like myself, and you don't want to deal with the consequences of your actions and being poor and getting the thing fixed, you say, it's probably just the thingy majiggy in the hyper overdrive. Hyper overdrive. That's what it was. But
Yeah.
you know, Mrs. Early says that it was pipes, which fair enough. That works.
Which that's where the interesting thing comes out because the youngest daughter, her name is Kim, uh, basically in what I'm going to say is like a almost like a self-manifesting way now like has a starts seeing a ghost figure that she promptly calls Mr. Pipes.
True. Very uncomfortable. Very, very skippy ippy. Not. It's a weird experience. Anytime you see a child interacting with a ghost, any sort of manner, you're kind of like, that's not gonna end well. You kind of start that off.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah.
Where are we? Back to the dark figure. No, Pipes lives in under the stairs, in the stairs room, boarded up like Harry Potter. Jesus fucking Christ! Can the British do other shit? Is what I said. Um, that's incredibly accurate. Can the British do other shit? If you're British, I'm sorry, get fucked. All you do is Harry Potter and tea, and we won the war. Get fucked. Uh, but I love you. And yeah, so I don't know. Does every house in England have a Harry Potter room?
The Harry Potter room under the stairs that they promptly boarded up because it was the husband had used it to like develop his own photos under there, and then like after they got divorced she like went in there I guess for like to check for storage or whatever, and then like claims that she got trapped under the stairs, like someone was pushing on the door from the outside.
It's true. Fun fact: we call this Harry Potter room the Glory Hole because why the fuck wouldn't we?
Yes.
I don't know
because
why.
because I don't think that's what it meant at the time.
Yeah, I guess not. I guess that they fucking don't care. Um, we're hearing a creepy "I'm choking on dry chicken" grunt coming from Suzanne when we're going through this little bit of information here. Um, I guess this is at the university we're talking about. Um, wait, they put Suzanne into like a sensory deprivation kind of activity. Was that what this is? Uh,
Basically, they deprived her of all of her senses except for sound. So what they did was they were like, okay, well, you're not going to be able to smell anything in here. You're not going to be anything to touch in this. Well, basically, like in a small little chamber. And they had like a bright white light blasted in her eyes so that she didn't see any other distractions. And then they played a sort of like white noise to her while she's in there to try and like I guess you could say evoke the demon.
yeah, this is our doctor trying to give us the evidence here of things that have happened in the house prior that we've not been privy to. That we're getting this little extra information, this little exposition, so we know things that have happened. So we basically get Suzanne doing this grunt sound. It's fucking weird. It's like almost a possession kind of thing. It sounds like it's two different people. college at this place where they are doing the study confirms that this is two different people. Um, we get
Imagine like if you forgot your wings weren't boneless, and then you just ate the whole thing and it got stuck in your throat. It's kind of noise.
absolutely fantastic point. Yes. We're going through some wreckage of the house here, and all of these teacups. I think there's like a woman statue, things like that.
A bunch
Um,
of like ceramic stuff.
yeah, they're all. You would think that they have been broken from an impact, but they have been proven. I think she said by the military. The doctor said
Yeah,
that the military explained to her that these were due to temperature change. Um, and then we got to see Suzanne using or was it Suzanne? No, it was someone else. I think it was the main British host man. He was showing us the spoons um that were bent like Alakazam in fucking Pokemon.
completely bent in like a candy cane shape type thing.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that. The final piece of evidence we get here is the fact that Suzanne's getting into cockfights at night. Holy fuck, Suzanne, you're such a baller. Congratulations. Mr. Pipes is really royally fucking scratching the shit out of her face every night, apparently.
I'm I'm glad you elaborated on that, because just saying she's getting into cockfights is well, leaves a lot to be for the imagination.
The adjectives are my strong point. Um, physicist time. Neat. He's just a skeptic, essentially trying to uh, come on and say, hey, here's why that's wrong. Here's why this couldn't have happened. The typical I don't want anything to be right. I don't believe in anything kind of guy. We get a little bit of him.
Yeah.
Kimmy, the youngest daughter, goes to bed, and we immediately experience a freezing temp. Uh, Sarah is basically saying, "Oh, there's no central air, etc." Complaining about the freezing temperature. Whenever I believe that we've gone through a bunch of things with the actual crew trying to explain how the paranormal freezing temperatures occur and etc. I don't know. I think there was foreshadowing there for sure. And anybody who has like any sort of like knowledge prior of paranormal activity kind of gets the cold temperatures, blah blah blah, whatever.
Yeah.
Sarah seemingly forgot while she's doing an investigation on that, so that's lovely. Um, Go to the neighbors next. The neighbors are talking about incidents with the family house, a window breaking, kids crying, etc. And then the neighbors said, "Oh shit, they're crying. We should offer them tea." Definitely British. Definitely British.
That's a very British response to someone being very distraught.
Extremely distraught. It felt like their entire family was crumbling, and they're like, "Oh, I spotted tea, bro." Yeah. We get to some collars. Back to colors, and Kevin is a little prankster, little prankster Kevin. He's quickly in, quickly out. Just telling you, go fuck yourself, little pranky bitch. Finally getting some banging while we're in the house. Suzanne is still in. Um, I believe this is the point where Suzanne was trying to give the audience what they want, but from what's happening, I think that was not at all what was happening. I think that she kind of just says that because she doesn't know how to deal with things, or she's trying to make excuses or something of that sort. But she tells them like this is what the audience wanted, whatever. But I don't know. What was your point of view on?
My point of view on it was that basically the family had been going through a rough time, and even the daughter says like at a certain point she's like, I didn't want you to leave. But I think she was terrified of her mom leaving. But by the idea of that, like, oh, there's a ghost in the house and they're all scared, the mom's being very protective of the kids, keeping them together as a family. So when they actually send this crew to investigate the potential that there is a ghost there, she is giving the crew what they want to see. And that's when they actually catch her, like through one of the other cameras, they catch her like basically banging on the pipes to make it seem like, oh, there's a ghost. But like she gets caught in the act, goes running down stairs, and is like, "I'm sorry, I just gave you guys what you want." It's a very like older sibling type of attempt to try and like keep the family together in a very messed up sort of way.
That makes sense. Okay, I wasn't sure if she was trying to like it was happening to her and she was trying to play it off or what was going on there.
Yeah,
So callers are flooding in with the description of the figure is in that building. Um, in the children's room, essentially. When we are talking about at the beginning, Kimmy had shown Sarah a drawing shortly before that seemingly matched this description of a very large bald man with a black dress buckled all the way down. Um, and so this is kind of getting corroborated from two different sources now, so that's a little bit more evidence, I suppose. Um, Next up is an anonymous caller. Her husband touched a glass table. It exploded, and the kids are stuck staring at the TV. The clocks have stopped. Um, three different coincidences at once. That's crazy. Just fucking bonkers. Hope that for them.
Like the entire time, like it's been a slow build up at this point too, because like they're getting calls in. People are mentioning like all sorts of like random things, like, oh, I heard like a knock on the wall or something, or my dog was barking at nothing. But they also always include something like, oh, the clock kind of stopped for some reason. What's up with that? You know?
So there's cats in the walls now. At this point, we're hearing cats. I believe it's Mrs. Early. She's just like, "Do you hear that? There's cats in the wall." Start hearing meowing after a moment. I said, "Puss in drywall." Uh, Suzanne really messed up. I don't know why I said that. She messed up about here.
I'm curious what you meant by that one now.
Suzanne really messed. I don't know what she did, but the activity started ramping up hard. We're kind of getting at this point some like seemingly Suzanne getting possessed, is what I said. Uh, she's kind of just starting to act weird, and voices are coming out more. She's kind of just like going into this weird state of being. It seems. Uh, we're already like the activity got up hard because there's not really much happening from the activity starting to ramp up, and Suzanne gets possessed. Kimmy's going somewhere. Bitch is behind the fridge. Uh, yeah. So we're right there. She's behind the fridge. We find her. She's basically getting told what to do by Mr. Pipes. Mr. Pipes is telling her to do weird shit. I don't know, for attention or to like distract, essentially. Uh, Shit's going
Definitely,
bonkers
it's
in the
like,
glory hole here.
yeah. At this point, they're kind of like directing the camera, the mic, all the equipment to, and I hate calling it the glory hole. I'm gonna call it the Harry Potter room
There
because
you
I
go.
refuse.
The photo
Uh,
room, the cat room, the fucking whatever you want to call it.
and there's just like a constant like cat screaming. But the moment they, like, mind you, the door is boarded up with like a plywood panel, and the moment they pull it off, like all the screaming stops, and the door slowly like creaks open, and you see like a little girl on the other side of the door, and then the camera just cuts away because the dude with the mic gets hit by the mirror falling off the wall and hitting him in the head.
So we've gotten some information by this point that there have been. So there was a person who was murdering children by drowning them who lived on this Fox Drive or whatever this is called, Foxhole Drive.
Yeah.
And then the further we get closer to the end, we're getting information about a man who lived with the Seller family, who
he
was
was
deranged as fuck.
a he was a mentally ill child molester that had basically claimed that he was being possessed by some sort of spirit or demon and took his own life in the Harry Potter room. But he had trapped himself in there with, I think it was like a dozen cats, they said. And when cats get trapped in a room and don't have access to any other food source for a week or so, they started digging into
Meow meow
the
meow meow
boys'
meow 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 meow.
meow mix time.
Goddamn right. We did got taken care of. So that's kind of our lore here that we're getting. We're finally understanding what the fuck there's cats, what's going on with this room, where the hunting's coming from. This place has been, uh, as far as we know, there's been 2 generations of absolute psychopath behavior in this area. Could be even more. The doctor or the parapsychologist doctor is telling us that we don't even know how far this goes back and how much this has gone before, but these 2 events are confirmed so far. confirmed by callers specifically, by the way. Callers come in and give us this insane information.
They're just like spoon feeding us all sorts of interesting information.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to get the exposition. You know, I don't. So the first person that called in just kind of like had some like family knowledge of a murderer. The second person was actually a worked at like the mental asylum for the person that was in the Seller
Hmm.
family. What was he, like the nephew or the cousin or something?
It's a family relative, one of the.
I missed that. So we're going to the bunker holes, whatever the fuck. Why do we open that? Don't know. Um, we're going back and seeing footage on the main host's screen. But at this point, I stopped and I asked Junie, why the Coke bottle on the table was half empty whenever we
Yeah,
last saw them. But they're just now opening up that Coke bottle. I specifically looked at it because this Coke bottle looked weird as fuck to me. And I was kind of having like a little bit of a nostalgia moment. Like that is extremely strange, and I like that.
they must
Uh,
have just got another one out of the fridge. It happens.
yeah, it's something like that. But I had to stop and ask him. Uh, we then very quickly realized that the footage we're seeing isn't live. And very shortly, the doctor says that we've created a massive seance by doing this on the TV, on air. Oh, that's not great for the rest of the world, I guess, because the studio starts filling with wind, and we're then cutting back and forth very slowly into what is live footage. Kim and are out of the house, both coming
They're
out,
being, brought out by the police.
but Sarah and Susie are still in at the very least. So we're going fucking night mode in the Diddy mansion here.
God
Uh,
damn.
we hear Susie in the glory hole, and Sarah and the other man. I believe it is it Mike or is it someone else? One of the men.
It's the camera guy.
So it's Chris or whatever the fuck. We try to get the boards off of the room. We get into it, and we're trying to help Susie, but Sarah also gets trapped in, and see absolute chaos that is going on in the studio after the door slams shut on Sarah, and we're kind of left to our own devices to make assumptions about what happened. I mean, there's not much confirmed here.
Uh, it's very like they leave it very open ended.
They do. Not sure how I feel about that, but I think this is the point where we could jump into some of this stuff we're looking up, because we do get a very
Uh,
lackluster ending here. But we
yeah, because like the understand that the entire movie is basically framed as like a, and when I say BBC, I obviously mean British Broadcasting Channel program, and it's airs on as like a normal, program that you would see on TV. And things start getting progressively weirder and weirder up until the point where there's like live feed from the studio of like the lights exploding, crashing down. The host walks in front of the camera and then starts speaking in like a demonic tongue. And at the time, mind you, this movie came out, or I shouldn't say movie, it's a broadcast, came out in 1992. Um, this had quite a bit of controversy. There was actually a lot of there's been a plenty of articles talking about it. There were basically, and what had happened was, imagine this was compared directly to like the War of the Worlds original broadcast that they did on radio. So imagine a scenario like this, right? You tuned with the World of the Worlds, like people would tune in at the start of the program, and they'd hear and be like, "Oh, this man's reading a book. He's talking about like aliens coming down to Earth and you know, doing horrible things to people, destroying cities and stuff." But in a similar vein, what happened with that was that people would also tune into it, did not hear the opening of the opening part of the broadcast, said, yeah, this is a entirely fictitious thing that we are reading, and we're getting panicked, freaking out because they think, oh god, aliens are invading. In a similar vein, this movie or this broadcast, like they obviously did have stuff in it that was like at the very start they said, this is the director, this is the cast, etc. all of the like the requirements, but people would be, don't always watch that at this, at the start, and people tune in the middle of the broadcast. So what ended up happening was in a similar vein, many people tuned into this and they're seeing horrible things on television that for what they normally assume is like a chat show, right?
They
They
do
bring up.
for the actual mockumentary. They have hired the British, like the BBC actual like reporters and shit that were a part of it that you would
Mhm.
normally see on your broadcast, which does help what this movie is trying to do and does hurt the general public with how it's perceived by them.
It was very the thing was they did such a very good job with how they wanted to do this, but they did not take enough precautionary measures to let the people watching them, because this was basically an hour and a half long continuous thing that started, because it started, it's important to note that this was aired, I believe they said it was like past 9 p.m. at the time, which in to my knowledge, not only you can only air this sort of like horror related stuff after 9 p.m. over in England.
Okay.
So when this aired, this was aired on Halloween as well. So they were kids that were just like getting done trick or treating, coming home, seeing this stuff, like just tuning into this and stuff. Parents, kids were all freaking out over this, and because they keep seeing like people they're very familiar with, it lended into the possibility that, oh my gosh, they might have actually like summoned a demon here in England and we're going to suffer for it. There was thousands, I believe the number was something like 30,000 calls over like the next 24-hour period to BBC about the broadcast, of all with different complaints and stuff. There was a lot. And unfortunately, this is where it's kind of like, the reason that it was also controversial as well was because not even like 5 years prior, right? They had a Halloween, and a similar thing. They had another Halloween special involving a dude who would perform like Houdini type magic tricks, right? And for one of his final performances, he had climbed into what looked like an Iron Maiden with like all the spikes and stuff, and it seemed to deploy early. And many people that were watching thought they just watched a man die on live TV, because even in that, they had cut away to make it look like, because they were like rushing the crowd, the audience out of the studio to make sure he was okay, and you could hear still on the hot mic that they were talking about what was going on. So in that instance, the guy was perfectly fine, mind you. This was basically a Halloween prank in a way. And the dude came on like the next day to be like, yeah, haha, I'm fine, don't worry about it. But was also kind of in poor taste, because 5 years prior to his performance, there was another, I want to say he was a stunt performer that had also, he didn't do anything like that, but what had happened was, he did have a heart attack live on TV and did promptly die. So there had been, at this point, you've in like a 10-year period, you've had like two very very, I would say, national scares, for people that are watching.
Yeah.
And this was a, that was just kind of like, the prelude, I guess you could say, to it. There was, that was just kind of like stuff that happened before this had gone out. But oh boy, the actual like aftermath of this broadcast is kind of wild. I don't know how much you had looked up on it, but let's hear what, I don't know if you have any notes written down on it, or.
I just was looking into the one suicide that happened because of it, um, and how it was a um mentally disabled kid who was apparently 18, took his own life because he thought the broadcast was real, um, and obviously that's not fucking good. Um, it's a hard one. You look at 24/24's vision of this kind of thing, and you think that couldn't possibly happen. We're so in the know, we understand technology, but looking back at the '90s and seeing how this went and how viewed it, it's just a really interesting little time capsule, and controversy is kind of nuts. Like the BBC was doing things that in 2024 we would hope to accomplish with our horror movies.
Yeah.
But they're trying these on a very typical. Uh, everybody's watching this news channel, and they. Uh, I mean, I'll be honest. If like Radio Silence, for example, made a film exactly like this, and they put it onto a random network, and I missed the first 2 minutes of the broadcast where it told me directed by, you know, I would be enthralled. But
Yeah.
I can see how some people with, I don't want to say weak minds, or like people who have like
There's a word for it, but more like people that are uh
susceptible.
yeah, susceptible to hysteria, I guess we could say.
I could see that.
Because especially because when you consider that this broadcast was effectively showing hysteria as, like, it slowly ramped up. The few calls were coming in, they were talking about their personal ghost stories, but by like the middle point they were saying they were getting hundreds of calls all talking about like the figure that they could see in the shadow of like the curtain and stuff, and how it looked. It was ramping up, like, and it was very easy for, and like, it normally with mass hysteria stuff it would be like, okay, one person hears like other people talking about, like, something horrible that's happening, and they start freaking out about it too. This would be like one person hearing an entire made up scenario, but because they was so convincing, that they did such a convincing job that they could buy into the hysteria from their TV.
Yeah. I mean, it's an insane accomplishment to get an audience to react in that way at the very least.
Hmm.
Um, it's a shame that it had so much controversy and that it caused so many issues. Um,
Sorry, but I did want to include, because I know we did talk about the tragic. There were three other instances that I found that were, one was not so funny, which one was that there were a couple of children that actually did claim to be suffering from symptoms of PTSD related to the broadcast of it.
Okay.
And the two that I thought were almost kind of funny. There was a pregnant woman that had claimed that because of like how much the movie or the broadcast had scared her, it actually caused her to go into labor.
Jesus Christ.
And there was a woman demanding compensation for a pair of pants after her husband had shit himself because he got so scared by the broadcast.
Excuse me, love. My husband's done right shit himself, and I'm gonna need some quid, right? Hey, bruv.
You just figured I'd give us a little bit more of a funny note.
Yeah, I'm glad that we're not ending on the person killing themselves and the PTSD, and we're ending on the pants shitting. That's great.
Yeah, I think that's a better way to kind of like, give us a bit more you know positive note or funny note. There was just so much, like, it was such a, like, understand, like, if you watch this now, you might be looking at it like, yeah, this definitely looks like a BBC broadcast, even like how the camera angles were, all the different like effects that go on and stuff. It looks like just a normal chat show stuff. And if you compare it to something like horror that we have of the modern day, where people wonder about, like, oh, was this, where you look at modern day horror and it's like, oh, based on a true story. This was effectively like, just didn't need to be like based on a true story to try and sell it. This was just, mm, and as a matter of fact, I would call it like the direct mass hysteria live on your TV.
It's true. It was
It was,
fantastic horror, is what it was.
yeah,
But in my personal opinion, it should have been not. It should have not been broadcasted on the BBC, and it should have had a place in a much more niche place where people who want to see it should see it. But
basically.
I mean, at the same time, it's Halloween, I guess. I'd really like to mention. So I'm looking at the Reddit for this, and I was
Sure.
looking at the drama from it, a big post, and I see some comments about some people who experienced it whenever it first happened, I suppose. And I wanted to give those comments a little fucking wordy word, because I feel like having someone actually experienced it, explain their thought process on what was going on is actually really cool. So,
Hmm.
we're gonna start with OMG, it's cheese. What the fuck? His comment, or their comment on Reddit.
Right.
It reads, I was 9 years old and not allowed to watch this when it aired, but I had also nicked my parents' tiny portable TV and had it in my bedroom. I was flicking through the 4 channels and found Craig Charles and thought it might be Red Dwarf, so watched it. It was not Red Dwarf. I was freaked the fuck out by this show. At the end, I ran down to my parents crying, who thought I was long asleep at this point. I downloaded it again fairly recently and watched it. It turns out there's still a small part of my brain that hears the voice, the Mr. Pipes. It's still 9. It freaks the fuck out, even though the rest of my brain knows it's just standard horror fare. The other comment, I want to see if it was this one. What was it? I think it might have been this one. This is Hestus I watched it at the time. I remember it being advertised as real and getting more and more scared as the show progressed. It wasn't still till close to the end when everything went crazy that I realized it was fake. But by then, I was so swept up by the whole thing that it was hard to let go of those emotions. Next day at school, I was the only one who watched it and nobody else had a clue what I was talking about. I think my parents had gone out that night too. I definitely watched it alone, so it got put to the back of my mind. Imagine my surprise when, years later, people start talking about it again and I got filled in with the whole story. I don't know, it's just a very interesting thought process to me.
It would have been wild to have been alive during this time to actually like watched through and lived through that event.
I would agree. And I think that my recommendation for this movie would be to show it to a friend who has no prior knowledge and just
Yeah.
let them watch it. Don't tell them you're watching horror. Don't say you're watching anything scary. Just tell them you're gonna watch a thing.
We're watching an old BBC broadcast. That's what we're gonna do.
Give it a go. See how it goes. And if it's especially your friends privy to horror, if you have like a very lighthearted friend, maybe don't scar your friend for life. But who am I to tell you what to do?
We all know that trauma builds character.
Would you like to talk about anything else?
I think we kind of covered the gist of it because the only other stuff that I could talk about is that, like, obviously compare that, like, uh, British, British TV stuff basically is different than American TV stuff because remember, 1992, they had a whopping 4 channels, right?
Yeah.
America was at a time where like channels were just kind of like sprouting up all over the woodwork. I don't think we quite hit like 100, but we had plenty more that you could cycle through. Whereas when you only have 4 channels over the time, if you're like, oh, I'm a 10-year-old, I'm sitting in front of my TV, it's like 9 p.m. or something. I'm flipping through the 4 channels and I see mind you, the host was a familiar face and did a lot of like children's talk show stuff. So you'd be like, oh, maybe this is going to be something I can watch, and then oh, you're in for what you could possibly assume is actual haunting that happened in your community.
You're in for a fucking nightmare, child. Have a
Yeah,
great Halloween.
basically.
We're actually nearing October 1st, so spooky Halloween shit coming soon for sure.
Oh yeah, we
Uh,
got some stuff in the works.
Absolutely. Can't wait. I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you guys for listening / watching wherever you're at, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Appreciate you. We'll be back soon, hopefully with the Grimmy Boys, so we have the full experience for you, and so Grim can absolutely demean and degrade everything that we are.
Everything that we love, yeah.
Yes. Love you. Bye bye.